9-year-old Ethan woke to an unsettling silence. His mother, usually bustling about the kitchen, was nowhere in sight. A note, scrawled on a crumpled napkin, lay on the table. It promised she'd be back soon, but the hours ticked by, turning into days, then weeks, then months. Ethan was alone. His mother had abandoned him. The days that followed were a blur of confusion and fear. Ethan clung to the fading hope that his mother would return, but deep down, a chilling certainty began to set in. He was alone, left to fend for himself in a world that suddenly felt vast and menacing. The silence of the empty house pressed down on him, amplifying every creak and groan of the old building. Survival became Ethan's new normal. Each day was a battle, a test of his will and ingenuity. He learned to stretch the meager food his mother occasionally left on the doorstep, rationing every morsel with the precision of a seasoned survivor. Making a single box of cereal last for weeks, he became adept at portioning out his meals, each bite a small victory. He taught himself to cook simple meals, fear mingling with fascination as he navigated the stove for the first time. The kitchen became both a classroom and a battleground. Bath time meant heating water in pots, the familiar routine now a laborious chore. Each pot of boiling water was a step towards a semblance of normalcy. Each day was a testament to Ethan's resourcefulness and resilience. He faced every challenge with a determination that belied his tender age. He scavenged for discarded bottles, returning them for a few precious coins to buy bread and milk. These small acts of resourcefulness were his lifeline. He learned to navigate the city streets, his small frame dwarfed by the bustling crowds that seemed oblivious to his plight. The city was a maze, and he was its smallest, most determined explorer. His innocence, once a shield, now felt like a burden in a world that seemed indifferent to his suffering. Yet, in his eyes, there was a glimmer of hope, a spark that refused to be extinguished. As days turned into weeks, then months, the gnawing pangs of hunger were almost easier to bear than the crippling loneliness that enveloped Ethan. The silence of the empty house became his constant companion, a heavy presence that magnified his fears. He yearned for the sound of his mother's voice, even if it was sharp or scolding. At night, the darkness seemed to amplify his isolation. Every creak of the floorboard, every rustle of leaves outside his window, sent shivers down his spine. He slept fitfully, haunted by nightmares of his mother's disappearance and waking to the cold reality of his abandonment. The weight of his loneliness was a crushing burden, threatening to suffocate the last vestiges of hope within him. Section 4. A glimmer of normalcy. School days. School became Ethan's sanctuary, a refuge from the isolation and fear that permeated his home life. The familiar routine of classes, the camaraderie of classmates, even the stern reprimands of teachers, offered a semblance of normalcy that he desperately craved. He excelled in his studies, his mind sharp and eager for distraction, his notebooks filled with neat handwriting that belied the turmoil within. His teachers, unaware of his grim reality, praised his diligence and quiet demeanor. They saw a well-mannered, bright child, not the frightened boy who returned each day to an empty house and the crushing weight of solitude. School was his lifeline, a fragile thread connecting him to the world outside his desolate home. Rescue and reckoning. Ethan's 2-year ordeal finally ended on a day that began like any other. The sun rose, the birds sang, and the world seemed to move in its usual rhythm. He returned home from school, his stomach growling with hunger. The house, as always, was eerily quiet, a stark contrast to the bustling world outside. But on this day, he was greeted not by the familiar silence but by the flashing lights of police cars and the murmur of concerned voices. The air was thick with tension and uncertainty. Neighbors, alerted by his increasingly gaunt appearance and infrequent presence, had finally contacted the authorities. Their concern had grown over time, culminating in this decisive moment. The discovery of Ethan's plight sent shockwaves through the community. People who had once passed by without a second glance were now gripped by a collective sense of guilt and sorrow. His mother, located soon after, offered no explanation for her prolonged absence. Her disheveled appearance and vacant eyes only deepened the mystery. The image of Ethan, small and fragile, standing bewildered amidst the chaos of his rescue, became a haunting reminder of the vulnerability of children and the hidden horrors that can transpire behind closed doors. It was a moment that would linger in the minds of all who witnessed it, a stark call to vigilance and compassion. Every child deserves a voice. Ethan's story, while shocking, is not an isolated incident. It is a reflection of a broader issue that affects countless children around the world. It serves as a stark reminder that child neglect and abuse often lurk beneath the surface of seemingly ordinary lives. These children, often unseen and unheard, suffer in silence. The responsibility to protect children falls on all of us. It is a duty that transcends boundaries and touches every community. We must be vigilant, observant, and willing to speak up when something seems amiss. Our actions, or lack thereof, can make a significant difference in a child's life. A child's silence should never be mistaken for contentment. Silence can be a cry for help, a sign of distress that we must not ignore. Ethan's story underscores the importance of community awareness and the need for proactive intervention. It highlights the critical role that each of us plays in safeguarding our children. By fostering supportive environments, strengthening social safety nets, and empowering individuals to report suspected abuse, we can create a safer world for our children. We can create a world where no child suffers in silence, a world where every child feels safe, loved, and heard. Every child deserves a voice, and it is our collective responsibility to ensure that their voices are heard. Together we can make a difference.